Thank you so much. I want to thank Diane and Tomer and the GIA staff for this incredible opportunity. This is just way too much fun. And I want to thank my idols and my mentors, Linda Ronstadt and David Hidalgo, for being here with us. We are truly among Chicano royalty. And secondly, I'd like to make clear that my work creating Los Cenzontles has been motivated by personal self-interest. I guess I'm a jigsaw puzzler, as Dr. Pastor described. Jigsaws in shades of brown. And I feel most useful when I'm connecting disconnects. And one of my lifelong disconnects is being born into two cultures. As a third-generation Mexican-American, I grew up with mariachi and rock music at my family parties. And like many in my generation, reconciling these distinct cultures into one life has been challenging sometimes. Mexican Americans are often asked to choose one culture over the other, and we're often judged as not being enough of one or too much of the other. And I was intent on using the best of both to become myself. And when I started working 25 years ago, I couldn't have predicted the historic demographic shifts that we've been discussing this week. I just tried my best to connect with people who might share my interest in cultural connection and reconciliation. And I've worked to keep a few steps ahead of conventional wisdom and all those consultants by using the strategic thinking that I learned from my immigrant grandparents, as well as from my parents who navigated family lives and careers in a changing world. In the mid-1980s, I began teaching Mexican music to young people in the working class neighborhood of Richmond and San Pablo here in the East Bay. At that time, the Latino kids were primarily English-speaking and listened mostly to hip-hop. And teaching them traditional music was like getting them to take medicine. The education in the neighborhood was and continues to be poor. There is little expected of our kids academically, and arts programs are inconsistent or non-existent. But I wanted to make a difference, and I knew that our neighborhood kids were as capable as any, and I wanted my students to take themselves seriously, to take learning seriously, and to think about culture, because culture is what shapes society. I sought out deep roots music and took the group on adventures to rural Mexico. Roots culture offers the most fertile terrain for musical exploration, where the individual and the community connect, and where there's a great room for interaction, improvisation, and participation. I integrated arts discipline that I learned at the conservatory into my methods, and I began creating a pedagogy that we're continuing to build on. I recorded the kids regularly and used that process as a learning tool and motivator. We played at flea markets and street corners and sold tapes to help raise money for the trips to Mexico. At one of those fundraisers, on a foggy afternoon in 1993, we met Linda Ronstadt.
Well, I remember the day that I went down there. I was with my little daughter, and was 2 at the time, and we had taken some stale bread, and we'd gone down to the Palace of Fine Arts to feed the swans at the lake there. And I looked around and I heard some music, and it was, traditional Mexican music being played really well. And I saw some dancers and some players. They were playing on the street. I said, I'm going to go look at that. And when I got over there were a lot of kids in the band. They were little kids. And they were playing really well. Lots of times when you see kids playing, your first impulse is kind of patronizing. You sort of set your face in a way and go, that sounds really good. These little kids beating their brains out, playing real out of tune. They weren't like that. They were playing really well. They could really play their instruments. They could really sing, and they could really dance. That's my little daughter there on the tarima dancing. She's now 20, and so that's where I'm in the background someplace. But anyway, I was so knocked out. So I went and talked to them. I said, "What are you guys doing here?" And they said, well, they were trying to get enough money together to go down to Mexico. They were going to go down and stay in a village and learn some of the traditional dances down there. They'd already taught them the traditions and the etiquette. That's my little daughter. And there's Eugene in the background there. And that's me way, way in the background. You can see me in the blue jacket looking at them. Anyway, it was apparent to me immediately this was different. This was not like most people teach children how to play music. And they weren't necessarily brought up to or trained to be performing seals. They were trained to enjoy themselves and really interact. It was music that was for them to, enjoy themselves culturally and socially as much as performing. But one of them is still here. He's, Hugo over there was, his voice hadn't changed yet. I call him the secret weapon. He now knows how to, not only is he proficient on his instruments and a good dancer, knows how to teach, he's also a really good recording engineer and a great singer and a songwriter. And Eugene is a wonderful composer. Anyway, I grew up in the desert in Tucson, Arizona, on what was then a rural route. And my family had built a little compound with my grandparents in one house and my father and my mother and the 4 of us kids in the other one. And I don't remember when there wasn't music going on in some form or another. My father on Sundays would sit and play the piano and key of C, everything in the key of C, and sing in this beautiful baritone voice that he had. He would sing love songs in Spanish for my mother, and sometimes he would sing maybe a few Sinatra songs. My mother would play something in ragtime or Gilbert and Sullivan music. We always had that going on. Music I heard before I was 10 years old in that house provided me with enough material to explore for my entire career. Which is stretched from the late 60s until, almost now. Increasingly, people's experience with music is passive. We delegate our musical expression to professionals. We have it on the television, places totally unsuited for music. And music can't be learned without both listening and playing. You have to do both things in order to really get music imprinted on you. So we need to teach our children how to sing their own songs and play their own instruments. We can't just leave it up to their laptop or the television to tell them what music is. They deserve and they are fully capable of learning to express themselves in a more subtle and profound ways of traditional and classical music.
In the early 1990s, our neighborhood changed dramatically because of huge waves of immigration from Mexico. In our neighborhood, there were now 2 Latino communities, the English-speaking and the Spanish-speaking. And the consequences of this change were both painful and exciting. We saw increased gang activity and other social problems, but we also saw heightened cultural activity, participation, and optimism. Immigrant families emboldened by critical mass wore their Mexicanidad, or their Mexicanness, proudly. Hip-hop no longer dominated the sounds of the streets as Mexican music from norteño to banda to cumbias began to take over. And this scenario played out all over California, but what absolutely amazed me is how few leaders or organizations, even within the Latino community, took notice or adjusted messages, policy, and programming. But I saw it as a huge opportunity because the process of acculturation creates enormous social energy, and we can either choose to ignore it or choose to cultivate it. In 1994, I decided to incorporate Los Cenzontles because of 2 simultaneous events. One was an invitation to co-produce a children's album with Los Lobos, which was my first professional recording. And the other was the murder of a 15-year-old girl, Cecilia Rios, that rocked our neighborhood. In fact, I remember flying in from one of the recording sessions in LA and seeing on the cover of the San Francisco Chronicle, Ruth's sister crying. And you only see Chicanos on the cover of the Chronicle when something bad happened, I guarantee you. And seeing only destructive displays of grief in our neighborhood from the kids, such as graffiti, I decided to put together a workshop with Ceci's friends to write a corrido, which is a traditional song chronicle, about her death. And it was the first time her friends publicly discussed their grief, and the result was consolation and a musical homage that was a source of community pride. These 2 events, one positive and one tragic, were both testaments to the power of culture and convinced me that we needed to expand our work. So when we first opened the doors of the newly incorporated Los Cenzontles Mexican Arts Center, by the way, I did it myself with Nolo Press. Remember Nolo Press? How to. In 1994, we saw an immediate enrollment of 175 students, mostly teens. We had no funding, we had no permanent space. We would carry in our instruments at 3 in the afternoon and we would take them out at 7 in the evening every day. And we had little pedagogy since few local music teachers could teach the traditional and popular music that the kids wanted to play. So I trained our teenagers to become teachers, and eventually I trained them to become administrative staff as well. They understood the neighborhood because they grew up in the neighborhood, and there was nobody more invested. So I'd like to introduce the members of Los Cenzontles here today. At this end, we have Hugo Arroyo, who was 8 years old 24 years ago, and now is our production manager, guitar, and vocal instructor. Fabiola Trujillo, who came to Los Cenzontles 15 years ago at the age of 15. She wanted to sing, but she was too shy to say she wanted to sing, so she said she wanted to play the guitar. but based on the fact that she didn't practice the guitar, I think we finally figured out she wanted to sing. And now she is our coordinator of our academy. Lucina Rodriguez came to us 17 years ago at the age 15 and is now our external education manager and dance instructor. Mireya Ramirez started with us at the age of 4, Lucina's student, and she is now 14 as of 1 week ago. Carlos Caro is our percussion instructor. We're very pleased to have him with us today. And Emiliano Rodriguez is my son. He's 17 years old, and he's been with us from before he was born. And my wife, Maria Astrid, who's sitting here, is our artesanía and jewelry teacher. She also designed our current space and designs our costumes, including these beautiful outfits that are made from Mayan scarves. Maria Astrid. I'd like to bring Linda back into the spotlight with a story. When we took one of these trips to Mexico, this was really, hardcore rural Mexico. We were 2 hours from any paved road. I saw a boa constrictor. There were still women who didn't wear blouses. It was just very, very rural. However, we get to the village, and through the village loudspeakers, what do you hear but Linda Ronstadt's mariachi music blasting all over this little village, which is a true testament to her reach and the influence of her music. And her work has made generations of Latinos feel proud of our heritage.
Well, I got to know Mexican audiences pretty well while touring with the Canciones de Mi Padre CD with the mariachi band. These audiences bring with them a very strong social connection and sense of participation. They know exactly the right place to scream and the right place to be quiet. Like, I never hear anybody going, heat wave, in the middle of a sensitive ballad. I'm singing Heart Like a Wheel, they go, heat wave, in the middle of it. Mexican audiences know just at the point where they catch the emotion rising and then, ow, it's just great. So, and you look out in the audience and there's the grandmother and the parents and the kids and the whole family's there, and everybody knows the songs and they all mouth and the words are singing along. Now, this sense of ownership by the public is especially important to develop in young people as they ready for a future in a rapidly changing world, because we are browning up fast here. It gives them a place of security in themselves, a sense of security that they'll touch back on throughout their whole lives. Mireya, grew up here, but she can go down to Mexico and she can hop up on the tarima and, interact with any. She knows the etiquette. She knows she has the dignity. It's just an amazingly important thing for them to have that kind of sense of confidence, and shines out of all these girls here. Nowhere is this more important than in immigrant communities where the trauma of acculturation adds stress to the normal stresses that our young people face. It's really hard. Of course, this increased scapegoating of immigrants makes this problem tragic. I've spent time on the border and have witnessed firsthand the trials that immigrants face. These guys, that get thrown back across the border, sometimes they've walked from Guatemala or Salvador, or they've walked all the way through Mexico. They're incredible highwaymen. They're incredibly gifted at overcoming adversity. They get up here, they find jobs somehow. They get caught by the migra and they throw them back across like they're trash. And we're throwing away people with, incredible abilities and, incredible will to work hard. It's just a shame.
Immigration has now slowed to a trickle and is even going in reverse in some areas. Our neighborhood demographic has basically come full circle. Our students, again, are primarily English speaking. However, acculturation continues to be a challenge and an opportunity. A recent study indicates that the healthiest Latino families are those with children who engage with their parents' heritage and parents who actively engage in U.S. civic life. And we're trying to address both of these issues with numerous community partners, including California Migrant Education. Los Cenzontles is a community organization that has grown its own. Our team is now developing programming and consulting to other communities nationwide to assist them to engage and build capacity within their local Mexican communities. This programming includes performances, workshops, and curriculum, as well as video and musical production. Our Los Cenzontles YouTube page hosts over 100 homemade videos, and we have recently launched a new social media campaign entitled Valor Latino to encourage participation and engagement among youth in civic and cultural life. Valor means both value and courage. We aim to increase the perceived value of Latinos in our country and encourage Latinos to speak up and express our vision for the future of our country. We must invest in comprehensive education for all American children. Educating our children in culture, arts, and creativity gives them powerful tools they will need in our rapidly changing world. And we must continue to provide the same level of support for this and future generations that we have provided for past generations. I realize that a lot of Americans are feeling fearful and would like to see this investment shrink, but to deny a child a complete education is to deny him or her full humanity. For the sake of our country's future, we must choose to invest into hope, opportunity, and into raised expectations of our children, and grow our vision of America, not shrink it. Los Cenzontles, for its part, will continue to evolve our programming to address future needs and challenges. Talk, Dave?
Well, okay. I learned how to play guitar, so I wouldn't have to say anything. But no, I'm kidding. Well, it's part of it, but this is living proof that it works. It works here, and we need all support. They need all support. Well, they need all our support to keep it going and to make it happen for the generations coming up. So please find it in your heart and in your pocketbook to support Eugene and the family up here.
A strong cultural connection to music gave me something even bigger than musical material. Gave me an enormous yardstick to measure my experiences against generations of other people. It placed me in a much larger cultural context, and it helped me to locate my humanity. Latino culture, as well as other ethnic communities, often includes heightened cultural participation. There's a lot to learn from them as we seek new ways to engage more people in the arts. Los Cenzontles' story is not just a story of an individual artist's trajectory, but a powerful example of holistic, participating community institution building in response to social challenges. Thank you for this opportunity to make this presentation.
We're going to do one last song, and I want to thank everybody for your kind attention to GIA. Linda and Dave, it's just unbelievable to be here with you, but also just to have your friendship over these many years. It's all about collaboration, you know, and these people are just like fountains of inspiration for me, and I appreciate both of you so much. Thank you.